Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to my channel for another Hot Toys 1/6 scale Star Wars figure unboxing and review. Today we're taking a look at the Marshal of Mos Pelgo, aka Cobb Vanth, based off his appearance in The Mandalorian. Now I got mine at a discount from Pop Collectibles. As always, do your own research, make sure you are comfortable before buying. I have popped the link to their site in the description below, along with the discount code Justin's Collection for 5% off your order if you do decide to buy from them. While you're down there, why not hit that subscribe, bell notification icon, and join button, so you're notified as soon as a brand new Hot Toys figure review goes live on the channel. As for the box art, up front we have an image of the actual figure himself, another one down below on the wraparound banner done in this very warm tone signifying the Mandalorian, and a metallic foil Star Wars logo in the middle. Then on the side of the box, this part is satin, whereas the banner is high gloss, and of course we have another image of Cobb Vanth. Around the back, warnings and legal information, plus the details on Hot Toys store locations. Underneath the lid, some figure photography, and some screenshots from the show like the Crate Dragon, because as we know, Hot Toys will never be making a Crate Dragon. That thing would be absolutely monstrous. As for Cobb Vanth, he has been a little bit controversial. This is one of the figures that I was most excited about, and they took ages to finally put him up for pre-order. First in-hand impressions, so far so good, but none of this is controversial. It's more so the head sculpt, and trust me, we'll get there. What we are going to do now, though, is get all of his accessories laid out in the light box and take a closer look at everything he comes with. Starting off with the display base first, which I think is the new gold standard for Star Wars diorama-style display bases. It's compact, it's low profile, and it's not even that much larger than any of the other Hot Toys rectangular bases. But it sets the scene so nicely, and the detail, it's lush as hell. We've got all of this weathering on it, it actually looks like aged flooring, the back part looks like a broken doorway, and we still retain the shiny silver Star Wars etched nameplate. As for this back piece, it is actually removable. The way it slots in between the crevices for the floorboards, quite clever because it does look completely seamless. Then when you do decide to take it off, you can just bring back in the crotch grabber, plug that in, and now you've got a massive, wide, big, flat diorama display base for dynamic posing. So, hell yes, if I have the option of getting more of these with future Star Wars characters, count me in. I can already think of a couple of characters that could use that style of display base. A New Hope Luke 2.0 if we ever get one, C-3PO, Han Solo, R2-D2, Chewbacca. That could be the Cantina entryway in Mos Eisley, it doesn't have to be Mos Pelgo. It's quite a universal Star Wars display base. Now, he does come with Boba Fett's jetpack, and after being rescued from the Sarlacc pit, if that's the right word to use with the Jawas, it's just destroyed. All of the paint has been chipped and scratched, and it looks nasty. You can remove the missile if you want to display it without it, or you can bring in this blast effect, plug that in, then you can make it look like he's actively firing the missile. So when you have this on his back, angle him forward, that is a neat effect. Speaking of neat effects, you also get some blast effects for the thrusters. Now these are prickly, and they don't love to go into the ports, so just take your time and don't put too much pressure on the spiky sections. You do get two of them, one for either side, but not a dynamic flight pole, so having him displayed mid-air might be a little bit of a challenge on the crotch grabber. It's not impossible with the crotch grabber, you just have to get the balance right. He does come with a bottle of Spotchka cast in translucent plastic with a real net over the top. The blue part in the middle is meant to look like liquid. From the top, the illusion doesn't work because it's just a hollow piece of plastic. If only they'd poured some blue translucent resin in there, that way it would have had some bubbles going on and it would have looked a lot more like liquid. This only works from certain angles and maybe at a distance. They have, however, hit the top with some speckling to give the bottle that cloudy look. We won't be going into full detail right now for the unhelmeted Cobb Vanth head sculpt. Just know that we do get it, and we'll discuss it when we pop it on the actual body. Next up, two brand new weapon molds. This pistol, super Western looking. This is exactly what I'd picture Cobb Vanth using. There's silver dry brushing here and there. You also have this wooden looking handle and a metal loop down below that can be adjusted. Now for the rifle, they fooled me. I thought these wraps were real fabric. That's how good the sculpt work and the paint applications are. I particularly like how the vents and other little bits and pieces are caked in sand via the washers. That makes it look like this rifle has been thrown around on Tatooine. And lastly, these big, chonky, padded, airsoft-looking fingerless gloves. We get gripping hands, trigger finger hands, closed fists, and some just relaxed open palm hands already installed on him. There are washers over the top and a decent level of skin texture, plus sculpted in fingernails. What we are going to do now, though, is get Cobb Vanth himself out here. Standing straight up and down in the lightbox, no crazy poses or accessories or anything like that. For me, the metric for seeing if a Cobb Vanth Boba Fett armored figure is perfect is if you showed this to someone, just him rotating around on the turntable and said, "Hey dude, what do you think of my Boba Fett figure?" And the reply was, "That's not Boba Fett, that's Wish Boba Fett." Well, that's exactly what you'd be hoping for Cobb Vanth. You want him to look slightly goofy, slightly weird, and to not fit the armor correctly, so all of those get massive ticks from me. But still have a great amount of detail, and he absolutely does. Now, right now, I'm undecided if I'm going to display him either with or without the armor, so I'm going to need your help throughout the course of the video as we check out the different looks and the different options. Please just weigh in down below in the comment section. Then hopefully we should be able to figure it out together. Up close and personal, kicking things off with Boba Fett's helmet. This, to me, is absolutely gorgeous. Hot Toys are no strangers to making Boba Fett helmets at this point. They've made like 1,000 of them. And the sculpt here being a little bit too wide to sit on the body properly, looking out of proportion, that is exactly how it should look on Cobb Vanth. When we saw him step through that doorway, we knew immediately that that was not Boba. The armor didn't fit him right, he looked very tall and lanky and skinny. And the same thing with the helmet, it sat a touch too high and looked a little bit goofy. That's what this captures, and not to mention all of the surface detail. There's weathering that you can feel as well as see. There's this bright, shiny silver underlayer, then the paint has been just completely stripped off by sitting in the Sarlacc pit. And you still have all of the same Boba Fett features that we usually do, such as the moving rangefinder and the sculpt work on the inside of the helmet. So if you just so happen to have him pose so you can see the underside of it, there is sculpt work in there as well. Unfortunately, they didn't paint the inside this time like we've seen them do with other versions of Boba's helmet. The attention to detail here with the weathering on every single part of the jetpack and the armor, like this backplate for example, with the shiny silver finish contrasting against the green and having it textured, plus the weathering inside the frickin' thrusters, it's just next level. I think this is the best weathering I've ever seen from Hot Toys. They've even added little washers in the crevices on the missile. Now the missile itself is new for Cobb Vanth, and same thing with this armor plate on the back. This is where the jetpack was smacked in Return of the Jedi, so the armor plate makes sense. They have ditched the little straps too, so you don't have to hook them on, then put the magnet on his back. Now they've just gone with magnets. While that does introduce some other issues, which we'll discuss later, I absolutely prefer it over those stupid, annoying little straps. Around the front, he is just wearing Boba's armor on the flight vest over the top of his slightly baggy red shirt. Now, I like the way this looks, specifically because it doesn't fit him right. In the show, the moment that Cobb Vanth stepped through that doorway, we knew that this was not Boba Fett because the armor didn't fit him correctly. Dude looked goofy as hell. So they've recreated that in 6 scale, which absolutely works for me. The only thing that doesn't around the front is this scarf. It literally feels like the cheapest dollar store material. It's very lightweight, the edges are fraying, which I guess can be chalked up as weathering, but there's a crease over the top and it rides up constantly. If only this was wired, or better yet just sculpted plastic, that way it wouldn't be as unwieldy as it is. The best way I've found to manage it is to pull the back bandana piece down, then use the jetpack to hold it in position. Still, you'll probably spend a while futzing with it, because it's got a mind of its own. Now the armor is sculpted plastic on Velcro, so you can adjust stuff here and there, especially this top piece, which you have to remove to take this vest off, which we will do. And the weathering, glorious. They've even got the chipped Fett logo on one side and the Mythosaur skull on the shoulder pad. That's a little bit more visible than this is because it's supposed to be covered up by the scarf a little. The gauntlets, also very weathered. You can see the silver poking through, there's some speckling of black on the surface, and some dirt and grime in the crevices. Now the hoses are translucent plastic, there's a lot more of them tucked up inside the vest. So if you want to use the double bend elbows, just make sure you are extending the hoses out so you're not tearing on the connectors on the ends of the gauntlets. There's something so eclectic about Cobb Vanth's pants. They're filthy, and they just look like a patchwork quilt. They're beat to hell. We've got these patches stitched in and not very cleanly, I might add. Different pockets from one side to the other. You have these canisters which are removable on one thigh, yet it's completely missing over here. The pockets don't match, and we've only got one Boba Fett knee pad that has copped a dent around the front. And the paint has almost completely been worn away. We then have these little pins around the back that are also removable, just like those canisters. He does have two belts on, and the bottom one is adjustable. This canvas one with the weathering on it, that's more meant to hold his pants in position, so that one isn't adjustable. Pistol is removable from the holster, and it's not really all that tricky to pop in there either. There are no magnets or anything that'll catch on it, just slides in there, no problem. Coming down to the boots, a split cut boot design. So that means maximum range of motion and maximum detail because they can sculpt in all of the wrinkling and all of the leather grain and the stitching. Versus if they were pleather, you just have to rely on the material looking good in the way that you've posed it. Whereas here, it's baked in, you don't have to worry about creasing or anything like that. It's always going to look perfect. Then they've hit the boots with this speckling of almost sand-like weathering over the top, because this dude is stomping around Tatooine, Mos Pelgo to be specific. So he would have sand all over the boots. On the underside, some fully sculpted tread. Now, if you're wondering what he looks like with the unhelmeted Cobb Vanth head sculpt on, technically speaking, this is a solid head sculpt. It's well painted. There's the frown lines and the wrinkles and the freckles and the expression works, having a slightly raised eyebrow on one side. You've got the hair dangling down the front, the natural flow to it, that seam that blends in with the hairline perfectly. The beard with all of that texture, the scar, that all works for me. It's just that there are two things that I'm getting hung up on. Number one, it's a little bit large and it sits slightly too high for me. Yes, the scarf can be used to hide that. And number two, the teeth. Whenever Hot Toys try and sculpt a beard on an upper lip and teeth that are single plane, not a separate piece of plastic inserted behind the mouth, that's when they struggle. And this time is no exception. Those teeth, they look terrible. You can see the gap is quite large, and they're painted in grey, and they are not glossy at all. I think they painted them grey to try and simulate shadow, yet if it was a separate piece of plastic, they could have been glossy, slightly translucent to look real as heck, and you wouldn't have had to worry about the grey paint applications. Right now, from a distance and maybe from above, I can see the likeness and it works for me. From below, those teeth, they just throw off the entire head sculpt. Now that we've removed everything, this is pure Cobb Vanth, no Boba Fett stuff except for the knee pad, just because I really like it there, so I'm going to keep it on just for my personal copy of him. Something about this works for me, but at the same time it doesn't. And I think that's down to proportions. Because the neck scarf rides so high and the head is a little bit larger so it looks better with the armor on, he looks like he's got a very long neck, and the head sculpt is a touch too big. It doesn't throw it off entirely for me, and I'm still considering displaying him like this in the collection. Because the last thing I need is another character wearing Boba Fett's armor. We already have way too many Bobas. With the armor off, we get a much better look at the red shirt. There is all of that battle damage, if you want to call it that, the little scratches on the surface and some lighter spots as well. Plus, this front panel is flipped over, almost like Luke's outfit in Return of the Jedi. That's something that I never really paid attention to in the show, maybe because the scarf was always sitting over it. You can ditch the scarf, I would highly recommend against doing that, because when you do, his neck will look way too long on this red shirt. See what I mean? He does look pretty goofy. You can tilt the head down and futz with the shirt to try and hide it. You're not really going to be all that successful though, because yes, the neck is just longer. It's longer to accommodate the armor, so you do have to work with the scarf in order to get it to look right. The collar is fully finished, however, so foreseeably if you did want to pad out the traps to make him look better, then yes, he would be displayable without said scarf on. The shirt is made of this lightweight, baggy fabric too, so when it comes to posing, I don't think you're going to have any issues. For a quick side-by-side comparison, don't these two just look fantastic standing together? On the left, Cobb Vanth, on the right, Chrome Mando. In real life, Pedro Pascal is 5'11", whereas Timothy is 6 foot, so seeing a bit of a height difference between the two is accurate. Next up, Cad Bane, who did kinda sorta kill Cobb Vanth. Or did he? Because is anyone really ever dead in modern day Star Wars? It seems no. Because we did see those cybernetic people working on Cobb Vanth in the Book of Boba Fett, so maybe he's not actually dead. Either way, Cad Bane is significantly taller than Cobb Vanth. This just so happens to be one of my favourite Bobas, the repaint armor from the Mandalorian, but I'm sure you have your favourite that you'd use to pair up with Cobb Vanth, because there are like 1,000 Boba Fetts to choose from at this point. As you can see, Boba is shorter and stockier than the Marshal. Going over articulation with all of the armor on, I left this stuff here because this is him at his most restricted. If you take everything off, he will have a greater range of motion. Starting off with the helmet, it's on a double ball peg up inside and a ball joint at the base of the neck. Looking forward to there, looking up to there, more than enough range for a rocket firing pose or a flight pose. Swivel and pivot side to side. The arms will go up to there, going forward and back, butterfly joints at the shoulder that hinge up and down. Swivel at the bicep, double bend at the elbow going the full way completely unrestricted. Then for the wrist peg, it's a hinge and swivel. The torso with the armor plating on only crunches forward to there, going back to there, swivel and pivot side to side. His legs will go forward to there. You can shift the pants if you do want to get them to go slightly higher. Going out to there, swivel at the upper thigh. Ratcheted double bend at the knee going just past 90, and a double ball peg plus a split cut boot design for the ankles. Good for forward and back, swivel, as well as ankle tilt. Moving on to the 3 cool and 3 annoying things. The first annoying thing is this scarf looks absolutely terrible. It literally looks like a $2 piece of fabric. It's fraying around the edges, which I guess does kind of add to the aesthetic. But having it be so smooth with this crease across the front and no dirt and grime and no detail whatsoever on it, yeah, I don't think it works here. I would have actually preferred if, instead of fabric, they'd gone with a sculpted scarf. The second annoying thing, you know I hate the straps with Boba Fett jetpacks. I do, it's a well-known thing at this point. I hate those little connectors. But they are necessary for this particular suit of armor, not only to be accurate, but also to hold the jetpack in position properly. Nowadays, with new Boba Fett figures, they have this locking mechanism. With this one, they ditched the straps and they're just relying on magnets. Those magnets aren't super strong, so multiple times while I've been posing this guy, the jetpack has fallen off on me. The third annoying thing, and it pains me to say this because the original prototype sculpt done by Yixi was breathtaking, but it's the Cobb Vanth head sculpt. The likeness is there, yes, and technically speaking, there's some really fine sculpt work and the paint applications are solid. Those little rabbit teeth around the front, they just ruin it for me. Not enough to say that I'm never going to display this head sculpt, but enough so that I am tempted to use the helmet most of the time, at least in my collection. The first cool thing is this neat little compact diorama display base. This is what it's all about for diorama bases for me. Doesn't take up a ton of room, but it still puts him in his element and it sets the scene, that moment where he's standing in the doorway and we first see him in The Mandalorian. The sculpt work is impeccable, and it's modular, so you can remove the doorway piece if you so choose. And what you're left with is just a massive platform for dynamic posing. The second cool thing is, I'm not sure exactly why, but there is something about the proportions, the squat rocket, and the color scheme of that rocket against the jetpack itself that just works for me. The paint applications and sculpt work alone were enough to earn this thing a spot in the pros and cons segment. And then it's got all of the additional features as well. You can rotate the thrusters, you can plug in the blast effects, one for either side of course, and you can remove the rocket. Then you can bring in the blast effect, plug it in at the bottom, plug it into the jetpack, and now you have rocket firing Cobb Vanth. This, still one of my favorite effect pieces that Hot Toys have ever done. The third cool thing is you've got options for the look of the Marshal. You can go from him wearing Boba Fett's armor looking like this to this, a completely different look achieved just by taking off the Boba Fett armor pieces and popping on the Cobb Vanth head sculpt. Wrapping up on Hot Toys Cobb Vanth, aka the Marshal. Immediately when I saw this guy on screen for the first time, I didn't like him, because that ain't my Boba Fett, and I love Boba Fett. But as we spent more time with him, and we saw him develop as a character and eventually ditch Boba Fett's armor but still be a badass, yeah, I came around, so much so that when Hot Toys teased this guy, I was praying that they were going to make him. And finally they did, and he turned out really solid. Not perfect, not flawless, solid. The outfit, incredible. Tons of detail. Love the diorama display base, the weapons are dope, the helmet, on point. But where this guy is let down ever so slightly is the head sculpt. I can see the likeness, the detail is there, it's just that it's not quite as strong as the prototype, and that's just so unfortunate because the prototype was out of this world good, and maybe that set our expectations way too high. I don't care, that's what I was hoping we were going to get with the final product. The end result is close, but at the same time, it's not quite there. I'm still happy with him, he's still going in the display, but maybe with the helmet on, still not entirely sure. Now, I got mine at a discount from Pop Collectibles. As always, do your own research, make sure you're comfortable before buying. I have popped the link to their site in the description below, along with the discount code Justin's Collection, for 5% off your order if you do decide to buy from them. While you're down there, why not hit that subscribe, bell notification icon, and join button, if you like the sound of seeing your name in the end credits of my reviews. Like, comment, and subscribe. We'll catch you in the next video.